Well, today we're joined and we're talking to an old boss of mine, in fact, a great bloke, a person who fronts his business as the brand. And in his spare time, which he probably doesn't have a lot of, he's the president of a fantastic AFL football team. Welcome to the Brilliant Business Minds series, Dale Alcock.
Good to be with you, Glenn, and thanks for the invitation.
Mate, pleasure to talk to you again. Dale, when this all hit around 12th of March, I suppose, when it all really got pretty serious here in Western Australia, personally, how did you respond? How did it impact on you?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. You know, it's interesting from a business point of view. Around the 16th of March, the Monday, I looked in my diary, and it was interesting that the week before I'd just been over in Melbourne for the last time at our ABN business over there. I'd flown back on the Thursday morning. Thursday night, I was down in the southwest at Bustleton at the opening of a display home. It was kind of interesting. There were lots of hugs and kisses and handshakes down there, which was kind of weird because in the week leading up to it, we'd had the sort of AFL launch. We played a game of footy. Unfortunately, we'd lost against Essendon. Not unusual for Freo, unfortunately. But and then here I was on Monday morning, and if I look back at that diary, and it's kind of 12 weeks ago now, everything changed, and there were these things that were post Monday the 16th that were these things called Teams meetings in my diary. So Microsoft Teams meeting, and it became full of them, and from really there to now, it's just been bouncing out of one teleconference to another. And so that was just one indication. As a group, we've got 1,600 people in WA and Victoria, and we went from virtually zero people working from home to 2 weeks later, we had 100% of our workforce working from home. So you can imagine across 2 states, 1,600 people, huge logistical challenge, but we managed it, and to a great extent that worked very well. And there's a lot of efficiencies and learnings in that. And I mentioned Teams meetings, and we're kind of video conferencing today. I think that kind of connection, being able to talk from 200 k's away or 3,000 k's away, but still be able to get that connection from tablets and mobile devices, is really going to change the whole AV landscape and the way we connect without having to jump in the car and physically be in the room. So that's kind of just one takeout.
Yeah, we find that being based in Bunbury, we often used to drive up to Perth and 2 hours there and a couple of hours back and 4 hours out of your day travelling. It's been pretty handy. It's interesting how it's actually had a positive impact in some ways. Interesting you touch on the footy there. My business partner is a staunch Eagles supporter, as obviously a lot of people in Western Australia are. And I commented to him at one stage that, mate, you're not used to adversity. Perhaps if you were a Fremantle supporter, you might handle this a little better. Mind you, he has been there for me on a few occasions as well. Dale, look, when you and I met around about 16 years ago, and I hope this is an interesting question because I think it talks about buying local, and I think it talks about you as a person as well. You could have been driving pretty much anything, mate. The real estate industry was doing pretty well at the time, and there you were in a Holden Monaro, an Australian product. Could you explain to me why? I've often wondered that. I think I know, but I thought I've got an opportunity. I'll ask the question today.
Yeah, look, it was an interesting period. I don't know how many HSVs I owned in total, but there were quite a number of them. There was a Grange, a Senator, a GTS, a bright yellow GTS Monaro when they came out, and there was a limited edition. I think it was only 50 of them, but it was called a GTO Monaro, which was an all-wheel drive model. And geez, I wish I'd kept that kind of devil yellow GTS and the GTO, just put them in a warehouse. You don't think of it at the time, but they would be really, collectors models going forward. But I learnt really early on. In 1983, I joined Webb & Brown Neves as an estimator in Perth, and worked for them for a couple of years. And, it's a bit like the Remington man, Lee Iacocca, and now I own the business. But it's interesting. Back then, John Webb, one of the partners, had a blue Mercedes, a big blue Mercedes. And it was interesting. I used to, on occasion, jump in passenger seat and go out to site with John, rock up to a building site. And it was interesting, the tradies sort of looked at John, a bit aloof, and he was sort of sales and marketing, a big ego. And, it was interesting that I thought, well, he doesn't quite have the sort of connection that relates to the tradies and relates to our business. So it was something that stood with me for a long period of time. And then when I got into business in 1987 with John Webb and Gary Brownneves, my first car was a second-hand Nissan Bluebird. So it wasn't anything too flash. But as we went along and progressed, I went through this succession of HSVs. And the interesting thing from the young tradies, when I'd rock up on site in one of these cars, they'd go, "Oh, wow, I love your car." And so we actually had this point of connection, and they could relate to it. And I think the issue of being able to relate to your people and to be able to relate to all different levels is really critical. And so, I've never owned a Mercedes. I drive today an Alfa Giulia. I have a love affair with an Italian. I hope Jan understands. But, again, it's a car that's a little bit different. It's kind of design driven. It runs below the radar a little bit.
Looking at the industry for building at the moment, we've got federal government stimulus, we've got state government stimulus. Do you have confidence in the industry at the moment as we head into the unknown?
Yeah, look, very much so. It's interesting that virtually overnight with COVID, we found, of course, we couldn't utilise our display homes for visitation. So a lot of that display home traffic and inquiry we get, we had to convert that to online digital inquiry, phone calls, etc. But it was interesting. We were starting to see both Southwest and Perth in WA. We were starting to see the first signs of genuine recovery. We'd had 5 years in the doldrums in WA, and we're all familiar with that. But particularly in our industry, it's hit us really hard. And we were starting to see that. And it's interesting, through COVID, there was this kind of resilience in the inquiry that we were getting, and it was leading through to leads, and we were generating sales even in that lockdown period. And meanwhile, the industry associations were driving hard with the federal state government about the need for stimulus, and hence on the 4th of June, the home builder stimulus from the federal government, and then only just last Sunday the state government came out with the WA building boost. So now you've got this combination of coming through COVID, and as an outcome, we've got stimulus packages that we've never seen the scale of before. So for a first homeowner or first time home builder coming into fray now, they're close to, I think it's $69,440 of value. So 55 with FOG, WA Building Boost and Home Builder plus stamp duty relief drives it up to just under 70 grand. Now, in all the years I've been in the industry, I've never seen that. So at the moment, we're just being inundated. It's kind of white hot inquiry at the moment where people are trying to understand if they qualify and what they qualify for. And it's sparked immediate, not just inquiry, but immediate sales. So we're very confident. It's around until 31 December with contracts signed by 31 December, short and sharp, but it will really bring our industry up off the ground. The great thing about home building from an economic point of view, you spend $1 on a new home, $10 additional get generated in the economy. So we're a great multiplier from that perspective. So I really see this as a kind of housing-led recovery in WA, which, those flow-on effects, the furniture shop, the landscaper, the pool manufacturers, etc., fencing providers, it just extends right out into the community.
Yeah, tiles, whatever it might be, as you say, plumbing, etc., and so on and so forth. And it's another aspect of that is that the tradies generally live locally too, don't they? So they're not fly in, fly out as a rule.
Yeah, most of what we consume there, there is some imported stuff around, steel and some of the white goods and various component elements, but a lot of it does get spent locally. So it really starts stimulating, the economy. And, one of the most important aspects, we've run a major apprenticeship program since 2004. I've currently got 80 apprentices in training. We run the biggest of its type of scheme in the country. I'm looking to hire more apprentices, both in the southwest and Perth. And
Yep.
so also we're looking at cross-training opportunities from people that might have come from been trades in a kind of different industry that's really been impacted negatively through COVID. And we're talking to state government at the moment of what short course training could we offer to try and get those people into the building industry, because really the last 5 years have reduced our capacity in this industry, and we really need to rebuild it very quickly.
Yeah, so it's actually quite exciting for our economy. Now, I'm physically going to shift for a football club, because at first I thought, it's, obviously things are going to be tough and the business world's going to be turned upside down, and all of the challenges that lay ahead for that. What are the challenges like for a football club, particularly a very big organisation?
Yeah, look, AFL football clubs are really interesting. There's only 18 of them in the world, and it's an absolute honour and a privilege for me to be the president of one of those. So particularly when AFL is our national game, or our kind of Indigenous game, is really prior to COVID was absolutely shooting the lights out. And I think that's fantastic from a national perspective, when the kind of internationalisation and Americanisation of everything these days, and yet our own Indigenous sport is shooting the lights out. So that's my first comment. I just think that's terrific. And I see it as a kind of community contribution that I can make, and I'm very willing to make. You've got all the impacts on your own business at this period, and then you've got AFL, where, in a sense, your whole business was not just kind of throttled down or reduced, it was taken away. It was just shut down overnight. Yeah. And it's interesting, the first thing I'd say about an AFL club is it's a club. It's a sporting club. It's a place of belonging. It's got tribalism. It's a shared journey. It's emotional. It's all those things. It's a club. But it's also a significant business, and it's an entertainment business that has sport at its core deliverable. And so you can never refer to it as a business, but you've got to treat it as one. Right. But it's got that overlay of being a club, and that kind of tribalism and belonging element is really critical. So, people have said to me, geez, you've scored the double here. You're in business, you've copped COVID, you're in COVID, and you've copped an AFL club that you're a president of, and how have you dealt with that? And I said, well, it's just like probably eating a bloody big elephant, and you can't get overwhelmed by either of them, and you've just got to start chewing on it a bite at a time, and know that eventually you'll eat the elephant, and you got to just keep that kind of positivity. Most important with any of these issues, and at a point through this COVID, and we're not through it yet either, by the way, but, as we've dealt with it thus far, things were just about changing on some days by the hour. So, you've got to have that capacity to be kind of dynamic and thinking on your feet, being agile and being able to pivot. But most importantly, to critically analyse the information coming to you. And I think the vital thing is to then make decisions, and continue to make decisions, because in businesses that go bad, and probably sporting clubs that go bad, if you talk to people that are expert in kind of sifting through the wreckage of business, there's a common thing that comes up, and it's not about great leadership. It's not about retailing and product and, people and smarts and all that. It's actually that they failed to make the decisions that were appropriate at the time, or they delayed making those decisions. They knew it. It was there. It's like driving down the road and there's a tree jumps out in the middle of the road, and you go, geez, if I keep going at this speed in that direction, I'm going to hit the tree and everyone in the car is going to be dead. Well, you've got to slow down. You've got to turn to avoid the tree. You've got to analyse that critical information, and most importantly, you've got to make a decision to mitigate whatever's in front, or take advantage of it. So, I think that then comes from not ego, but it comes from a level of good self-confidence and self-belief that I've got this. I've got the confidence to deal with it, and I've got the self-belief that if I make these decisions, they might not necessarily be the right decisions, but I'll review that further down the track. I won't be negative and worried that I made a decision. I've made it, but then have a look at how it rolls out and then be prepared to review and make another decision. Not kind of, I never look at it as reversing the decision or being concerned that I made a bad decision. Let's just make another one. Let's get in the room, think about the critical information, and just make another one, and make another one, and make another one after that. And that way, in yachting parlance, it's like tacking. You know, you're out in the ocean. You know you've got to get back to Bunbury Port. That's fine, but a series of tacks will get there.
Yeah. And
sometimes you might have to go sideways and backwards, but you've always got your eye on the prize that I've got to get back home to the port.
Yeah, and taking action beats inaction, even, as you say, even though it might take you off on a slight tangent. One of the things that I noticed with the sport in the first round was it showed how much the crowd is a part of the experience. Watching it on TV, it was very flat, and looking at the way COVID is in Western Australia at the moment, do you have optimism that perhaps we could be in a pretty good position here to have crowds at Optus at some stage throughout this season? And if so, maybe Western Australia has an advantage over Victoria and we get them in a hub over here?
Yeah, certainly that's the intent, Glenn, that by us really kind of making a sacrifice at this point to go into the hubs at the Gold Coast. And just on that, and again, this goes to my mindset. I'm a glass kind of half full person, and so when the hubs were proposed at Fremantle, we said, "Hey, this is an opportunity." So we've actually, for the first part of the hub over there, our new CEO Simon Garlick has gone over there with our players and support staff. Because being a new CEO, that's an opportunity for him to really bond closely and engage closely, hover around it and over it. But also, most importantly, it's not country week. We're not going there for a kind of a bit of sport and a bit of fun. It is like a mission into enemy territory that we're taking really seriously. But for a young crew and a young squad, it's a real opportunity to get in there, bond together, and really grow together. And that'll set us up really well going forward. So we don't know. My gut feel that'll be maybe 5-6 weeks, and we should know within the next week or two where that's at. And again, that goes to something that's really important: is give people direction so the anxiety levels drop. That's really critical. We need to know. But our hope is that when we come back in 5-6 weeks' time, that we will then get a series of true home games in WA. Hopefully border restrictions are kind of reduced, and that 14-day isolation period might come off. And we're already planning at Fremantle for partial crowds, a little bit like what's happening in South Australia for their showdown. How would we look at that? Would it be a sort of a draw where people going, how do we find that X number of thousand people and do that in a fair way?
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you. As ever, you can never please all the people all the time.
No, but it will make a difference. There's no doubt about it. Finally, Dale, what's this experience taught you about people? In particular, I guess the Forever Freo project.
Yeah, look, one thing about the Forever Freo project, and just to give you a little bit of insight, we launched that now about a bit over 2 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago. And the concept of that is an idea that we were kicking around retention of revenue, clearly. I then thought through and thought, hang on, there's an idea here where this could be a revenue growth and retention strategy. And by that, we would have to give something and give something significant. So it was really funny. I had this display home that we're just finishing off, which is just down the road from Coburn at Nangdoggalup at the Apsley Estate. And I woke up one morning on a Friday and thought, oh, there it is. It's right in front of me. That's the opportunity. We have this key prize being a Dale Alcock home. There it is. And then we get a car, and then we get some groceries, and how would this kind of roll? And from that, within 3 weeks, we had over 500 prizes, over $1 million worth of prizes on offer, with the house, the car. I think we've got Willie Creek pearls and groceries and the whole bit. We put it out there, and it just, we got saturation sort of coverage because it was so unique. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the Freo faithful, the Purple Army have turned up. We've even had West Coast supporters saying, I despise your club so much, but I want you around forever. So I'm going to actually buy one of your hero memberships for $100 because I might win a house or a car.
Well, it's like Batman. He needs to have the Joker as his ambassador.
Exactly right. Because this guy said, well, because I want to continue to play you guys and beat you forever because I despise you so much. And I'm going, well, that's cool. Whatever it takes. We'll take your money. Doesn't matter. But back to people. Look, I think the opportunity to work with people, to love working with people, but also to be able to genuinely give something. And back to that sporting club, sporting culture. It's about a shared journey. It's about giving. It's about, everyone engaging. And critically, we know through this period that a lot of people are hurting financially. So we wanted to ensure that those that would pledge their membership. Those that couldn't, well, we need to talk to them and bring them with us. So it's got to be inclusive. It's got to take everyone with us and no one gets left behind. So, look, it's always said it's all about the people, but it's all about the people.
Yeah. On behalf of the RMS family, thanks for joining us and all the best in the future.
Thanks very much, Glenn, and thanks for having us. And I reckon my final word would be, go Freo.